In my family, we've got the most incredibly immature habit of throwing each other into water wherever it may be found. So whatever the time of year it may be, spring, summer, autumn or winter, and whatever the type of water, sea, stream, river or pool, the rule is if there's water, someone has to go in, which is the reason we're also slightly overweight, to avoid ourselves being thrown in. Anyway, this came to a height a number of years ago when my older brother George, who's 95% Christian and 5% animal, and you're never sure when the animal's going to emerge, pushed me into a river on January the 1st. So I was in Surrey, we'd all met as a family for lunch. I was looking down into this river, his boys were either side of me, and the next thing I knew I was falling in. And time just freezes, and you think, he's not done this. And I went in, it was absolutely perishing, January the 1st. Anyway, because I'm a Christian and a vicar and a forgiving man, I went straight up the bank and took him in. Now, just to say, just so that you know, the key to getting anyone to water is to sacrifice yourself. So we went in together, and my car keys fell out of my pocket, and it wasn't a great start to the new year. Anyway, it didn't break the water habit. And about 6 months later, I was in Australia doing a placement, and on a day off, I got taken to Botany Bay, and it was a beautiful day. The sun was bouncing off the water, it was crystal blue, it was calm as a mill pond. I thought, I've got to go in. Actually, I thought about throwing the guy I was there in, but he was 70 years old, so I thought I can't do that. So I went in so I took off my clothes, which is down to my boxer shorts, which is now a terrible sight because I've got a furniture problem. My chest is in my drawers nowadays. And I was just walking into the water when this Aussie I was with said, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you think I'm doing?" "I'm going for a swim." He said, "Don't be ridiculous." I said, "You don't be ridiculous," trying to look as dignified as one can in Marks and Spencer's boxer shorts. I said, "There's no one around, I'm just going to nip in." He said, "What about those signs?" And I looked around, and there were two massive signs with great jaws clamping together saying, "Danger, sharks, no swimming." I said, "Listen, mate, I'll be fine." He said, "No, you listen, mate. 200 Australians have been killed by sharks. You've got to work out whether those signs are there to save you or to ruin your day. You're of age, you decide." And with that, he walked off down the beach, and I rather pathetically put my clothes back on and followed him. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we come to Christmas, can I tell you, you'll never get it. You'll never get it unless you see the danger sign that we've got in the last 3 words of the passage we've just had read. Do you see the danger sign? This opens up Christmas. There it is, the coming wrath. And the question is, am I trying to save you or ruin your day as you see that sign? But I'll tell you this, just as a pastor, I hate it when people withhold information from me because I can't make a wise choice. I hate it when they do that, and here's the information. Now, God's wrath is his settled, controlled, personal hostility to evil. And I want to persuade you of this. It's a wonderful thing because it means how I treat you and how you treat me and how we treat the world matters to God. Some people here will have been treated appallingly by others. In fact, I guess at times most of us, one way or another. And it matters to God. He cares passionately. He's not like some grandfather who leans back as the grandchildren muck around and says, "Sweep it under the carpet." He cares how you've been treated, and he cares how we treat others. So when you read this word wrath, please don't think of some volcanic anger that you may have found in your family where someone flies off the handle to stay in control. That's not it. It's settled, it's controlled, it's passionate, it's loving. And in the Bible, I'd love to persuade you of this Christmas. God's judgment is not set up against God's goodness. God's judgment is proof he's good. Because he's good, he judges. He cares what happens in his world. I've got a twin sister. She worked out in South Africa in the townships for 15 years. I'm incredibly proud of her. She saw more death and suffering in a week than I've seen in a lifetime. A couple came to her and said, "Our daughter was raped and murdered. The boy that did it was out of prison after 18 months. We thought our little girl was worth more than that." Now, as you hear that, we need there to be a judgment. But the issue is, ladies and gentlemen, it comes all the way down to us. So Jesus, as he spoke of this thing, he said, "What you've said in the dark will be heard in the daylight. What you've whispered in the ear in the inner rooms will be proclaimed in the roofs. I tell you, my friends, don't be afraid of those who kill the body and after that can do no more. But I'll show you whom you should fear. Fear him who after your body has been killed has authority to throw you into hell." So there's this judgment, but it's a good thing because God cares about evil in his world. And it's a problem as we come to Christmas. Let's think of Christmas morning. I've got young kids. Let's say on Christmas morning they came in and they said, Daddy, we've given you mouthwash because your breath is absolutely toxic. And we've given you Head and Shoulders because your hair is greasy. And Daddy, we've given you a toothbrush because your teeth are yellow. And we've given you deodorant because, frankly, your armpits reek. Now, can I tell you, if you'd got these four, it would knock the confidence of even the best of us. Because it's a physical problem. Well, this says there's a spiritual problem. But we're not left at that. I could stop now, I'd be absolutely miserable, but I don't stop. Because can you look back at our verse? Now, again, this gets Christmas. It opens up now. Because the verse speaks not just of the coming wrath, ladies and gentlemen, but of Jesus who rescues us from the coming wrath. So as Paul went to Thessalonica, there was no doubt he spoke of the death of Jesus. And he said, it's special. It's no ordinary death. It was to pay for sin. So Jesus said, I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd comes to lay down his life for the sheep. He said, I've come to give my life as a ransom for many. And amazingly, we've just had it read. As Jesus gets born, we just had it in Matthew 1, verse 21, Joseph is told by the angel, she'll give birth to a son. You're to give him the name Jesus because he'll save his people from their sins. So there's a job description. And the job description is, Rico Tice, I'm coming and I'm going to save you from your sin. I'm going to pay in death and blood for what you've done. So do you remember Jesus gets strung up on a cross and he cries out on that Good Friday, my God, why have you forsaken me? And those words, it's interesting, they're not words of physical agony, though he is in physical agony. There's 60 million slaves in the ancient world. This is how you keep them in order. We get the word crux from excruciating, cross. But they're not words of physical agony, they're words of relational agony. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you thrown me out? Why have you rejected me? Now, what does that mean? How do we get that? I grew up in Africa. My dad worked for BAT, a tobacco multinational out there. There was no kids' TV, so I had two hobbies as a 5-year-old in Africa, stamp collecting and butterflies, and both were amazing in Africa. And as a 5-year-old in Africa with stamps and butterflies, you needed one of these, a magnifying glass. But I soon found as a little boy in Africa that making little things bigger was not the only thing that a magnifying glass could do. I found if you took one of these into the midday sun, the possibilities were endless. So you could set alight a leaf or a piece of newspaper or even the gardener's hut. And best of all, I found, if you held your twin sister down, you could scare the living daylights out of her with one of these. That was before I thought of ordination into the Anglican Church. You see, you can take a magnifying glass and focus the rays of the sun into such a sharp point of intensity that it burns things. Well, imagine, if you would, this Christmas, a massive moral magnifying glass the size of this room. And ladies and gentlemen, through it are passed not the sun's rays, but God's righteous anger. And I say again, it's a good thing. God's righteous anger at the gossip, the hatred, the self-centeredness, the lust, the arrogance, the dishonesty, the lies in my life. I'm not even talking about yours. But imagine it all comes down, 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 until it hits one man at one point in history with such terrible intensity that he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now, can I tell you, if you start getting that, Christmas starts getting overwhelming. It starts becoming incredibly joyful. So as I close, how do I know whether I've got it or not? How do I know whether this is in place, this understanding of Christmas? Well, here's a question I often ask people. I say, this Christmas, if you were to die tonight and God said, why shall I let you into heaven, what would you reply? So I find myself rocketed into the judgment of God. And he says, Rico, why shall I let you in? What would you say? Now, would you say, many do, this is classically English in my family, I've been good enough. I don't steal, I keep the 10 Commandments, I give to charity. In fact, my charitable giving is index linked. I've not been a murderer or a rapist or a dentist or a traffic warden. I'm not one of those evil people. Welcome if you're a dentist. If you're a traffic warden, you might want to see me afterwards. I don't lie. Would you say, look, I give blood? I've had people say that. Rico, I'm a blood donor. I give liters of blood. I recycle. Some people, you watch them doing it, they almost faint with self-righteousness as they recycle. This will get me in. Or would you say, actually, no, it's religious. I go to church. Actually, I don't just go to church. I'm a member of the Church of England. I'm an Anglican. You know that, don't you? Why is it the Anglicans will be first in heaven? Because it says in 1 Thessalonians 4 that the dead in Christ will rise first. That's us. That's the Anglicans. Don't come near us. We're hopeless. I've been baptized. I've been confirmed by a bishop, you know. I pray. I read the Bible. I go to communion. I watch songs of praise. That's what the cabbies say. You take a funeral. He never missed it, vicar. Now, here's the question this Christmas. Ladies and gentlemen, where's your trust placed? Is it in what you have done, classically English, or is it in what Christ has done? Because can I tell you, when it comes to these things, you know, these things, they're like trying to put sticking plaster on a gaping wound. They're good things, but if my sin is this serious, they're never going to pay. Otherwise, why did Christ have to come? Or this Christmas, am I going to say, no, actually, with the shepherds, don't be afraid, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. Today a Saviour's been born. Well, what's the baby save me from? The coming wrath. That's what's overwhelming. So as I finish, I say three things this Christmas. Number one, ladies and gentlemen, can I tell you, sin is serious. There is a judgment to come, which, as I say, is a good thing. We'll never get Christmas unless we're serious about that. Secondly, I must be loved. I must be loved. That God should send his son to die for me. I've got 2 little boys. I wouldn't let them die for anyone. But God says, Rico, I'm sending my son to die for you. And thirdly, it's a gift. You can't earn it. It's a gift. And when we give each other gifts at Christmas, it's meant to be to remember that one. And our prayer this Christmas is that you'll do it. And so this is Christmas. Well, what does that mean? Sin serious. There's a judgment to come. Amazingly, he was born to rescue us so that we can be with him for eternity. Can I tell you, if you get it, the joy is quite overwhelming. Let me pray. Jesus, who rescues us from the coming wrath. Oh, Father God, help us to see that judgment's a good thing. Help us to have our eyes open to the fact your Son was born to die. And Lord, as we unwrap that gift this Christmas, please, by your Spirit, give us overwhelming joy. Amen.